Rise of the Aelfir. There were 1,000 human kings and emperors across an untold amount of cultures, faiths, and lands never to be known by the world after. The Magi kings of humanity had ruled for so long that their blood had long propagated through to the rest of their species, and even if humans were born with too little of the blood or too unknowing to use it, all had the power within them. Even if they hadn't, they were still the children of Aelfir, and the blood of creation flows throughout all. But Aelfir was yet to be satisfied. Conversing with and then ruling over humanity had captured their interest for a fleeting few eons, but they once more grew bored and distant. While humans praying for loved ones or experiencing great crises still sometimes received aid from their creator, it became more and more rare. They had not forgotten about humanity, but they had moved on from them all the same. Just as the owner of a loyal hound may find their priorities change at the birth of a child, so too did Aelfir find new and far more important tasks to look towards. They worked from within their throne tower, which sat in the center of the world surrounded by a swirling archipelago of lands soon to be named Arteridexron, one day to be Outer Dikos, or the Imperial Isle. The world passed, ignored beyond the confines of this mortal fortress as Aelfir labored. Perhaps they merely remained focused within the other plane, and they simply confined their mortal form within. Or maybe the creation of new life required Aelfir's presence within the material. Either way, after unknown millennia of labor, they finished their second project. While Aelfir's name for this creation, if they gave it one, is unknown, history would come to call them the Aelfir. They almost all stood taller than any man at their shortest. Their skin ranged in shade from an abyssal black upon which light did not reflect, to subtle blues and greens, to pallid grays. Their muscles moved with strength comparable to some of humanity's strongest. Their least developed minds could process and understand information exponentially faster than their lesser counterparts. They controlled magic as naturally as a human child knows to breathe, and their lives continued for so long that no human ever knew of their age, for they'd always long grow and die before seeing even a year seem to pass for an Aelfir. Aelfir released their creation upon the world, and just as they did with humans, they conversed with them and gave them gifts of magic and power. The Aelfir worshipped Aelfir just as the humans had, and could far better understand the workings of the universe and reality than their lesser counterparts. But they were still incapable of seeing the inner workings, of understanding the veritable forces at play in the world beyond theirs. Aelfir felt they had gotten closer to their goal, but found even the Aelfir wanting. As Aelfir tried to see whether the Aelfir may prove worthy, thousands and thousands of years passed. So superior to humanity in all ways, the only thing the Aelfir lacked was the ability to reproduce, an Aelfir woman normally only being able to birth a single child in hundreds or even thousands of years. Despite their small numbers, however, they grew in size and power and slowly tore down the realms of man, taking power or forming their own kingdoms to consume their neighbors. While Aelfir saw their lack of reproduction as a benefit, never having truly understood the odd ways in which humans multiplied, the second flaw became apparent and bothered even the Aelfir's creator. The Aelfir were cruel, they were vain, and they were hateful. Ambition seemed to flow through their blood just as readily as magical power, and as they consumed more and more realms of man, they enslaved millions. In this long era of brutal war between the species, the Aelfir leveled entire regions with their magic, ignited cities and kingdoms, sacrificed thousands of humans to power further magics. Millions would die, possibly billions, and soon the Aelfir controlled eras and ruled 1,000 empires and kingdoms under which humanity slaved and toiled endlessly. Aelfir still answered the pleas of humanity, but they had long moved on from seeing them as their true and most important creation. While Aelfir wept for the oppression of humankind, the Aelfir were also their children and proved far more capable of understanding the words Aelfir desired to speak. While sometimes Aelfir came down to save oppressed men or delay Aelfir domination, they continued to grow increasingly distant and seemed to not see it as their responsibility to prevent the wars of the two species. Ersinon had allowed humanity to fight their endless petty wars for millennia, had saved many slaves, but had allowed slavery and oppression. Was this truly different? Why should they strike down the Aelfir, equally their children and twice as impressive as man? Ersinon may have wept for their children, but they were content to do little more than observe and tinker. As Ersinon continued creating new and odd species of plants and animals to populate the world, built new islands and continents and tore down old ones they found wanting, added more stars to the sky or new colors to the world, the Aelfir's empires grew and expanded in size and power. Humanity toiled and grew in number to better serve their Aelfir masters, building massive cities and monuments dedicated to the Aelfir or to Ersinon. Their slavery was universally brutal, human lives being treated like simple tools, used until broken. When they were not being worked to death with only the minimum amount of comfort needed to prevent premature death, they were being sacrificed in the millions for rituals of the Aelfir's use. Ersinon's magic was one of creation. It was a mysterious force meant to create and continue life, but the Aelfir had learned to bastardize it. Humanity had never understood the art of sacrifice, of the use of their own blood, but the Aelfir had discovered the power within all blood and the ability to use it to further fuel their power. The 1,000 Aelfir empires were all different, for just as humans, they possessed a myriad of cultures and religions across the world. More than anything, the Aelfir desired to create, just as Ersinon did. This was another facet of their envy, for while they recognized and respected Ersinon's ultimate authority and power, their ambition made them wish for nothing more than to match it. Ersinon's unique ability to create new life required an expertise and control of magic exponentially surpassing even the greatest of Aelfir, for while even the weakest Aelfir magi had been stronger than the greatest of humans, none of them could ever hope to become close to Ersinon. So in their infinite desire to learn to create and guide new life, the Aelfir all found their own ways to match it. Aelfir empires would build monumental works of steam and steel, flying ships and walking metal men infused with the souls of human slaves or their Aelfir enemies. Others focused on magic, building great flying citadels or developing rituals that allowed them to explore Aervor and the cosmos or making new beings built from the fabric of magic itself. Finally, many went a different path, bastardizing and twisting the creations of Ersinon into new and horrifying forms they considered more beautiful, useful, or merely a satisfying reflection of their twisted imaginations. Many of these beings live on millions of years after, some even somehow reproducing, giving birth to many of Eris's most feared creatures. 1,000 empires stretching the world, oppressing uncountable humans endlessly in a desire to prove their own power and learn to master the manipulation of the universe. Some say that the Aelfir had even been preparing a great and powerful spell to strike down the Creator themselves, just in case their master ever tried to work against them or if they ever believed they could match their power. Some human cultures lived as house or pleasure slaves, others served as bodyguards for the Aelfir to watch over their fellow man, and most served as little more than endless replaceable labor to die by the hour, toiling in millions of mines and fields and constructions to create as the Aelfir wished. Ersinon saw this and decided the Aelfir were a failure. Was their insanity a result of Ersinon's failures? All were merely a reflection of Ersinon themselves, just as humanity, but had Ersinon perhaps mistakenly given them the worst of their traits? Or perhaps Ersinon had not understood that giving mortal beings such power and longevity would twist them in ways they had not imagined, warping the Aelfir into a cruel mockery of their intentions. Either way, Ersinon chose what they saw as the best path forward. To them, humanity was a fondly remembered pet, and the Aelfir were their rebellious child. A third project, a hopefully final work, was to be made. Something surpassing the power of the Aelfir, something truly undying, something able to interact with Ersinon and speak with them on a level they could finally find pleasing. A being of pure magical energy made into a material form that could exist in both the realm of reality and the realm of the gods. A true equal, hopefully, one without the flaws and finally meeting Ersinon's power. Perhaps this was folly. Ersinon gave humanity ignorance and false hope, the power to believe one could do the impossible, and their refusal to accept such things. No being could ever match a god, especially when every god was truly unique, little more than concepts and manifestations of reality's loss. But Ersinon still endeavored on their possibly doomed quest, for they were still loneliness, and they had yet to find a being they could communicate with. The third project would be the one, they hoped. And so Ersinon withdrew yet again, answering fewer and fewer prayers, observing less of the world as they secluded themselves in their tower. And humanity, dejected and alone, living an endless hell of torturous slavery, observed. They watched the Aelfir and studied their ways. Long ago the Aelfir had killed all human magi, but the blood still flowed in them, and they were surrounded by powerful items of the Aelfir's creation. All rebellions had been stopped by Aelfir magic, their power to destroy entire nations with the movement of their hands. But humanity saw and watched, and in secret they whispered to one another about the use of the art. They first learned the powers to move around the world freely, and then the powers to speak to others without moving their mouth or being in the same land. Magi worked and toiled in secret and in hiding to study and repurpose the magics of the Aelfir. They spread their art to entirely new realms and planned a great uprising that humans would launch on each continent and island and city. They spread the art of magic, the most powerful spells and rituals humanity had ever known written and memorized, and they stole and hid arms and weapons from the Aelfir's forges for the use of man. It would be the longest and most prepared event in human history. Millions toiled in secret for centuries to prepare, humans even slaughtering their fellows in the thousands if there was even a chance for their fellows revealing the coming uprising. Eventually, one morning or one night, the truth long lost, they rose. The Godherja had begun.